Thanks, Mayor. Members of Council. For our agenda tonight, I'll give you a quick overview. We have a number of closed session items that may take a bit of time, so we'll try our best to go through the informal as quickly as we can. We first have John Sanderlin, who will give us an update of his FY 2015 audit plan. And I will say that it's been a pleasure, or it is a pleasure working with John. He really helps the administration in terms of continuous improvement, and that's something that we always strive for. As a matter of fact, in the lines of continuous improvement, the staff over the break, we have been working to put to writing what we have, some documentation related to strategies for strengthening internal controls as related to the Zobie investigation, as well as documentation related to the investigation that we'll get to the council this week. As a matter of fact, I had a couple conversations with Councilman Protogero, and I think schedules just got us off in terms of talking a bit about that. So John will give us the FY15 audit plan, and we look forward to working with John along those lines. We have an update from Stephanie with the polling place change, as well as a presentation tonight with the Cottage Line dune application. Based on our last meeting, we did have outreach to both the Norfolk Public Schools as well as Old Dominion University. So if it works for the council, we could queue up the Norfolk Public Schools for a joint meeting on the 9th, and then that's the next meeting for the council. And then on the 16th, the tour of Old Dominion University that got canceled or delayed. And as you are aware, we then, in the month of September, on the 22nd and 23rd would be the retreat. So that's tonight as well as the next month.
Marcus, I also think it would be appropriate to try to schedule a meeting with Norfolk State.
Great.
As well, later in the, October, November, something like that. Their enrollment's about to dip between below 6,000, and so, anyway, this would probably be a good time to go over there and see what we can do. Right?
Perfect. We'll work through that.
Okay. All right.
And that's what I have.
Okay, so hopefully we can move to council concerns. Andy, anything?
Paul, I guess the most important thing that I would have is really a report back to the council on the regional jail. With regard to the regional jail and how it works, there's 4 member cities. At least currently, there's 4 member cities. Norfolk, Portsmouth, Hampton, and Newport News. The governing board has been meeting almost monthly recently since the ICE inmates or the immigration inmates had been pulled out. We lost about 400 inmates. That generated a lot of money from the federal government. Those inmates were placed into what we think are called as a private facility that's built a little bit closer to where they are needed. And I think that the immigration laws as they're being supported by administration have changed. That being said, it made a big hole within the jail. So the member cities, we had to do something. In so doing, the discussion initially was Portsmouth. Portsmouth, of course, has been looking to take their jail, move it out of where it currently is. But I think things are moving a little bit too fast for Portsmouth. Keeping in mind that the governing body of the regional jail is a council member from each city, a representative of the manager from each city. I think now we have Ms. Meyer, before we had Stanley, and also the sheriff of each city. And I will say everybody is always there. My alternate, in case I need an alternate, is Mr. Riddick. I haven't had an opportunity for him to go lately, but it's a real privilege in what I do for a living to be part of this board. What happened was Chesapeake had run into issues, the cost of building a new facility and whether or not to join the regional jail. I had just given up the chairmanship and the negotiations with Chesapeake had begun. Currently our chair is Gabe Morgan, the sheriff of the city of Newport News. What has happened now is Chesapeake has asked to join as a full member. The board has agreed However, we can't just do it on our own. Each member city has to vote that. And I believe that's what the request is this evening, is that we will have that vote tonight. The significance of this is that we have 250 guaranteed beds at the facility. Chesapeake will also have 250 guaranteed beds at the facility. With the movement of the 400 immigration inmates out, we pay a per diem for each inmate. That per diem is around $63 per inmate per day. That in turn would be substantially higher if you can imagine losing 400 inmates, or basically what could be considered perhaps a quarter of our population, a quarter to a fifth. That being, and also I will also say the importance of the regional jail is it is a hospital facility. It is where all the mental health patients go. They can do dialysis there. They don't have to send somebody out for dialysis, which is very costly. They have minor surgical opportunities that if it's needed, that can be done there. It has a geriatric wing. We had 9 women pregnant recently, which is extremely high for the facility. So it does offer the appropriate care. That being said, we would ask that this evening that we pass this ordinance. Every other city has passed it, including Chesapeake. That would, I guess I'm calling it an ordinance, but it may not be called that. Marcus, what do you?
It is an ordinance.
It is an ordinance. That it would amend the service agreement to allow Chesapeake to come in. They will pay a little bit into the capital account of the jail, and then they do have inmates coming in now on a gradual basis and gradually building up to their 250. So it's a win-win for all of us. We were very, very fortunate. It was unfortunate for Portsmouth, but their politics and their abilities to move that quickly, I don't know if anybody could have moved as quickly as perhaps some people wanted them to move 400 inmates from downtown Portsmouth out to the regional jail. It'd be very difficult. So that's understandable, but Chesapeake came in at the appropriate time, and it helps all the member cities out, including. So I hope that answers any questions. If not, I can find the answer out or let you know.
Do the immigration people not foresee with all of the buses of people who are being dropped off in various parts of the country, do they not anticipate using any of those beds that they previously had?
Angela, that is a great question. It's possible. We still have space available should they come back. It's possible, but we have not seen an uptick in that at all.
Okay, thank you, Andy.
And just to constitutionally, there were certain issues, and if I could, Vaughn, I apologize, just to answer the question on that. There's certain, I think constitutionally, it's looked at, you have an immigration inmate that comes in that perhaps has not committed a crime except for the fact that they're in the United States illegally. Yet we have other inmates that are accused of having committed crimes. And the blending of the two, there are certain security issues that I think some people would say treat them differently. We, of course, could not. We did our best to accommodate them for years. But I also think there were certain changes within the administration in Washington that they sought to open, I hate to say their own private jails, but it seemed to be a private facility that did take a majority of them, moving them closer, I think, to Rappahannock when we lost them in about November. And then we started looking. I gave up the chairmanship, and Gabe did a great job in negotiating with Chesapeake. We rotate every year now, and so my chairmanship ended timely, and then Gabe was my vice chair and has done a great job.
Okay.
That's all I had.
Thank you. Mr. Rick?
Yeah, okay. Mine is more of an observation. I want to thank the manager for his funding this summer of the jobs programs, the recreation center. The center that I interact most with is Huntersville, the Kathy Hegwood over there. And the Teens with a Purpose, which really gave a lot of youngsters something to do. And also the Church Street Festival, I see you see queued up there. That's going to be this Sunday at the corner of Church Street and Virginia Beach Boulevard. And it's a free concert. So the manager has done a lot to give youngsters something to do. I don't know how you track, incidents as far as youngsters are concerned. But I will say with what he has done this summer, and over in Huntersville, those youngsters are busy every week. They were doing something, And so, I know funding is tight, and there are a lot of things, big ticket items that we consider important. But I really want to thank you, Marcus, for realizing that these youngsters that we deal with, are really our big ticket items. That's all I have.
Really? No, on the other hand. Okay, all right. I don't have, Mr. Barkley, Terry.
Just very quickly, and this is not an original thought on my part. We have a very vibrant downtown and waterfront with a lot of activities scheduled for this fall, and a lot of expectation that that big building down there is going to someday be more than just an empty pit. I think a sign somewhere on this saying, stay tuned, coming soon, something about that we have plans and are actively moving toward refurbishing that would really be a good idea for us.
Mimi?
I just want to say something positive. First of all, it is an honor to be here, to be a city council person. Today, I got a chance to spend time with the Rotary group at their luncheon. And Marcus, you were talking about us having a joint meeting with Norfolk Public Schools. So today, I was in the company of Norfolk Public Schools and a group called Life Enrichment Center. And we've been partners for about 9 years now. And I just really want to announce that we will open our, our 4th computer lab center at Lindenwood Elementary, and that there are plans for 2 more computer labs to go into the elementary city centers throughout the city. So it was a wonderful experience. The Life Enrichment Center was given, the regional group raised $5,000, and then the Norfolk group matched it for another $5,000. So it is something wonderful happening for our city as well as the Norfolk Public Schools. And I was honored to be there to represent our city council.
Great. Thank you. Angela?
I have 2 things. I'll start with the easiest first, and that is the Christmas holiday is coming. So I'm thinking that perhaps our staff might be able to work Monday and Tuesday, the 22nd and the 23rd as full days, and then as a suggestion, give them Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday off, which would be the 24th, the 25th, and the 26th. So I would greatly appreciate it if you would take that under advisement. And I'm sure our staff would appreciate it if you would pass that on through. I always think of Christmas in July.
I hope my office is Conley Phillips right now is
Where's
I know, right? But I think that a lot of times, I often hear the employees say that they appreciate the time off to be able to spend it with their families. And I think that, I've said it before, we are able to come and go, make choices of when we're gonna be here. And our staff depends on us voting on when they are gonna have days off to be able to make their plans. So if they know in advance that they're gonna have the time off, then maybe a trip that they wouldn't have taken to visit family, they can take, or they can plan for, or, something like that. So I just think it's a matter of being, making it convenient for them. The second thing is, I wanna apologize to the chief because, I made a comment last week that I did not expect to turn into a media frenzy or a letter writing incident or anything like that. It was simply to bring a small situation to the attention of the manager, because customer service is a big deal for me, and to bring it to the chief. And I apologize that that turned into a story that did not portray the police department in the best light, because that was not my intention. And so in the future, I will take my own advice and just, maybe I'll call you first. But I apologize that the police department was criticized based on a small incident in a really nice event where they were interacting with the community, and where there weren't any major kinds of incidents. And there are a lot of people who will only read the front page, and they won't go to page 3 to read the rest of the story that talked about how great the event was and how great your participation was. So I apologize for that, because that was not my intention. So that's all I have.
Okay.
Waiting for
Nice
Pharrell
going.
to come running in and start singing Happy. This is-
Tommy, if you'll just pass. We'll do
Quickly, I don't know how the structure works in the post office. I know it's federal government. I don't know if anybody else has noticed the condition of the post offices in our city. They are overgrown with weeds. They're not maintaining the property. There's trash everywhere. I was at 23505 at Ward's Corner. They've got weeds coming out of the building. And I think that, I know they're federal government, but maybe somebody should try to contact, if there's a regional manager or somebody, and say, maybe we can assist. I know they're going through some financial issues. They don't edge their properties at all either, so the sidewalks are all overgrown where there are sidewalks, but a lot of people are starting to notice the condition. And post offices are supposed to be places where you feel safe and friendly. So if somebody in the city can make contact with somebody in the federal government about that, maybe we need to go to Congress, I don't know, but it would be nice if they cleaned it up.
A lot of those facilities are owned locally and rented to
Are
the
they?
Postal Service.
Oh, okay.
So I guess we probably need to go, and, to help Tommy's suggestions to find out which ones are owned locally.
The
And,
one there at North Collie, what is it? Collie and 32?
yeah,
Is
38.
horrible. 38
Yeah.
is horrible.
Yeah.
38, it's terrible. Right.
yeah, a lot of them are rented to the Postal Service.
Okay, all
That's it.
right, thank you. Mr. Manager.
Say good afternoon to you. As you're aware, annually, I present to this body, to a committee of this body, the annual work plan for the Office of the City Auditor. So this evening, that's going to be what my presentation consists of. In presenting, I'm going to talk first about the purpose of the plan, the work plan for the office. Also, I'm going to talk about the development of the plan. Then I'm generally going to talk about, give an overview of the plan, and then we'll move into some details of the plan in terms of when the individual audits will be done over the fiscal year. First, let's talk about the purpose. The purpose establishes the framework for which the office will conduct audits and reviews. As such, it guides the activity and the workflow of the office, and also it outlines the audit focus that our office would have for the given fiscal year. Within all of that, the plan, the recognition is that the plan is to be flexible because there are other priorities that come up, higher priorities based on risk assessments and management requests. We will adjust the plan accordingly. So over the years, we have always had a concept of flexibility for the plan. In developing the plan, there are broad categories of areas that we consider as sources for which we would get areas to audit. As you can see, there's audit leads, which come from prior audits, our external audits, our complaints that may come in from investigations. Also, internally, the staff has experience with the city and various city departments and internal controls assessments that they may make recommendations to me as the city auditor. Externally, we look at current events, we look at trends, other localities, what's going on at the state and federal level. Also, management concerns. I and the city manager have been meeting for the last few months on development of the plan, I think ever since May or so. And also, some of the department heads will give us suggestions of areas that they want to look at. And of course, the city council, you as a body can always chime in on things that you want us to look at, since our office is your responsibility, and you can give your suggestions as well. But we generally look at your concerns and we try to follow some things that's going on the council. From an overview standpoint, there were 15 projects that we considered initially before me and the manager basically said, okay, this is it. We think it's good. Then we moved into 8 that we decided on that we think would be the best for us to look at for this fiscal year. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these, but some of the 15 that we consider, citywide maintenance process, it can facility maintenance, budget controls, ERC process, fire rescue, use of consultants, effect of centralization. These are some of the things that we had as some things we could look at. What we decided on as an office, and my recommendation to you all as the council, is these 7 areas: the assessment of the subrecipients of the Community Block Grant Program, evaluation of the property and evidence controls, and that's in the police department, assessment of the administrative hurdles for the Norfolk Interagency Consortium, the evaluation of effectiveness and controls of the safety program. Also, we'll do semi-annual reviews of disbursements. Also, we'll look at the evaluation of effectiveness control for citywide contract administration. We'll look at the management controls for the citywide maintenance process. And those are the 7. Right, other projects that we will consider for this current fiscal year, is the other activities that our office do. A lot of you may not be aware, well, most of you are aware, we maintain and administer the fraud, waste, and abuse program. Also, we are the administrators for the external audit contract, where we work closely with the finance department, but we also have the responsibility for the school's administration on their behalf in the EDA. We're participating in the city manager's strategic workforce analysis team, which is SWAT. Me and the manager have been talking over the last several months about ethics training, and our office partnering with HR to do those training. Also, we have started initiatives to go out to the departments to present the fraud, waste, abuse hotline. Risk management training is another area that our office is going to try to initiate, with helping the departments to identify risk areas. Then also, our responsibility is for the reporting of the missing, lost, stolen property items around the city is to come into our office. So those are some of the things, additional things that we would do along with audits. As you're aware, each year we don't complete our plan from the previous year. So normally those things roll on to the current fiscal year from the previous fiscal year. These are some of the projects that we are basically completed, and you should be getting reports in the next month or so on third-party billings for the Norfolk Community Service Board, the management controls of the city leases, the control planning process for the permits, final inspection process, also for the scope promotion account. We are also looking at the transition for the Norfolk Public Schools, the benefits, also the school before and after school program that's managed by the Department of Parks and Recreation, and a review controls of the Nauticus, the National Maritime Center. Those reports you should be getting between next September and October. So now I'm going to talk about this schedule, and you have a sheet before you to show you how we are going to do these particular activities by quarters. As I stated, the first quarter is normally a rollover from the previous fiscal year. So you have those items that I just mentioned in this quarter. So the staff have basically completed these audits, and I've done management reviews, and we're looking at to issue the reports. And also we have these other projects that I mentioned. The second quarter starts the new audits, basically, that's not rolling over from fiscal year 14, which would be the review for the Norfolk Interagency Consortium. That's with us looking at the administrative hurdles for that particular unit of the city. Also, we'll still be looking at transition from the Norfolk Public Schools benefits, the effectiveness of the citywide contracts review, and the effectiveness of management controls of detention. So this is our second quarter for the audits. And we have, again, some of the other projects that we are working on. Third quarter, where we'll pick up with the sub-recipients review for our CDBG program, the evaluation of property and evidence control, as well as our safety review, our safety program. And we have a rollover from the contracts review for the Citywide Contracts Administration, and also our detention center review. Lastly, our last quarter will encompass the evaluation effectiveness of the management controls of Department of General Service. That's a focus on the citywide maintenance process. We will continue to review the sub-recipients of the CDBG program, and also evaluation of the property and evidence of police, and also we will continue with the safety to review our safety program. So this represents the plan that you have before you. You have it in a different format before you, showing things that we plan to do. So if you have any questions, I entertain those questions right now, any concerns. Okay.
Mr. Sim, my question is, what causes the initial items on the plan for the current year to roll over to the next year? That's my first question.
Okay, all
You
right.
want me to go ahead to the second, or you want me to allow you to answer that one?
I can answer that first.
Okay.
Second. Why we have rollovers, because normally it's a resource issue. Not just be upfront with it. It's a resource issue. Because back in 2010, when we started managing formally the hotline, those investigations are priorities for us, so it competes with the annual plan. So normally it's a lag, will always be a lag in that fourth quarter, third quarter from the previous fiscal year, where those items, projects, or audits will roll into the next fiscal year. So it's really more of a resource issue. And the audit process can be complicated at times. We try to work with the departments. We don't go in demanding that you need to give us this today. We try to work to make sure we're not impacting the workload, the operational work of the departments. So those are some of the reasons. Many more I can say, but those are the general things: resource and just the nature of doing audits, the planning process, and the interaction with the departments.
You could just follow the Portsmouth auditor's plan, and that would fix all your problems.
Okay.
My second question is, does the list of the previous year and the current year items in the plan continue to increase? Which, what I'm trying to say, that you never get to a point where you can check off all of your items from the previous year and say, okay, I'm finished with that. And now I'm dealing with the current year, and I can really spend majority of my time on the current items on the plan.
Yes, we do. Matter of fact, it's a performance measure for our office.
Okay.
And we track that through the budget process to be able to say not only what we have complete, what percentage of the plan that we complete. So we are tracking that as a regular performance measure, and yes, we do check off. And when you receive a report, that's one of the checks that we have completed the work. So we don't have any continuous. One point in time, we had staffing issue just because turnover, and we did have some projects that went on for a few years because they were big projects, and we had turnover, so it ran 2 and 3 years. But we are able to check them off. So we in the audit world, we do have this term called continuous auditing, but we try to make sure we complete the projects that we have on schedule. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You've been humble in the past when I ask you this question, so I'm going to ask you again since your last answer. What are your needs staff-wise in your office? Because I know we added a position 2 budget cycles ago, but it seems like that you could use, and you always say that you're perfectly staffed, but I just want to, what do you need?
I'm not sure I use the word perfect.
Well, yeah, but you
I
have
think
what
I'm
you
in
need.
the same position that all the city departments are in. We all can use more staff. We have resource constraints, which all departments have, and we try to operate within that constraint there. Of course, we could have more people. I'm not prepared to tell you tonight, this afternoon, rather this evening, that, yeah, 3 more would do, 4 more would do, 5 more would do. I'm like any other department, and I can say that from a humble standpoint, because I got department heads here. All of us would say we probably need more staff, including some of the other the Constitution's officers as well. We would say we need more staff. I'm not prepared. I mean, I could get that information for you if you want it. If the council wants that information, I can do a package to show you what we are not accomplishing. One of the things we want to do is do cycle audits, which means every 3 to 5 years we'll do all the city departments. We have not been successful at that, and I will say that because some of our departments are very complicated, and the components of these departments could be many cities and require a lot of resources. So I can get that information for you based on our what we call auditable universe of things that we have not audited, things that, how long things have since it's been audited, whether it has been audited. And normally that would say what we would need.
Are there any opportunities, I don't know if other offices do this, but with Norfolk State and Old Dominion University right here, and you run an intern program in the summer, but is there a possibility to find future CPAs and others that want to get that experience to come? I know it adds more to you to manage that, but maybe that's a...
Well, actually, our office historically had interns from Norfolk State Old Dominion.
Okay.
We partnered with the departments. We kind of, in the last 4 years, we kind of weaned away from that.
Okay.
But historically, even my predecessors over the years, I would say over the last 20 years, we have had that partnership with the departments. And some students would come and basically say, we would like to do this for the whole year, and we used to participate in the paid program during the summer.
Right.
So we are very familiar, and then we would take that under advisement and suggestion for us to move back in that direction.
Okay, is that good enough? All right, John,
All right,
thank you
thank
again for another good report, I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Polling place change,
Yes.
right?
Hi,
Hello?
good afternoon. Thanks for having us back in the Norfolk Office of Elections to talk to you about polling place recommendations. With our last conversation on July 8th at the formal session, City Council requested that we take another look at possible alternates for the Hunt and Y precinct. So we did visit several locations with the city. The Secretary of the Norfolk Electoral Board, the city's ADA coordinator, and myself visited the Fire Station number 1, which is at the corner of St. Paul's Boulevard and Wood Street. We visited the Murray Center, the Basilica of St. Mary of the Immaculate Conception, Tidewater Park, and we have these results for you, so we wanted to go through that with you. All the sites were great. We thank everybody for their willingness to participate in this and show us around. Lovely facilities, but we did have some concerns, so we wanted to go through those with you. With regards to Fire Station number 1, the main concern was for the safety of the residents of Tidewater Park, given that the vehicles responding in emergency situations were concerned about the safety of the residents getting into the facility, as well as the heavy traffic with the bus terminal that's being proposed right by the facility and the current bus traffic on that street. There's also concern for the security of the fire station equipment, property, and the personnel belongings within the fire station. And there's the absence of a ground floor enclosed space that's suitable as a polling location. If we were to use the bays of the location, they would actually have to open the bays, remove equipment and belongings, and there's no air conditioning. So that could be very uncomfortable for some of the poll workers in the hotter election days. With the Murray Center, that's located at 455 East Brambleton Avenue. This is, of course, a private facility. It's tied in with the First Baptist Church, which would be an added cost to the city. There would be an additional undetermined cost for security there on Election Day. There would have to be security there to open up the facility and maintain the facility and close the facility on Election Day. Their food license restrictions, since they do operate as a banquet services, there would be license restrictions for officers of election to actually bring food and snacks in from the outside. They did offer to cater, but that would be an additional cost to the city to have that. And the other concern is, since it is a banquet service and they do have other special events, we know the city has hosted several promotions, retirement parties, and so forth. If a special election were to be called and the facility was already reserved, that could present a problem. We visited the Basilica of St. Mary of the Immaculate Conception at 232 Chapel Street. This again is a private facility, which would be an extra cost to the citizens. The approval for this would have to go through their risk management officer and the Richmond Diocese. There would be an undetermined cost of any future obligations to maintain this location, since it is a private facility. Whenever we use a private facility such as a church, when the strict ADA guidelines, if anything changes, which they do change all the time, the city is responsible for upgrading those locations, which could be an additional cost to the citizens. So with that being said, we had some relocation recommendations. Our first would be to relocate the Hunton YMCA to Tidewater Park Elementary School. And then we also left the Ruffner Academy on the table for council to review that we had discussed before. If we were to relocate the polling place to Tidewater Park Elementary, we would also change the precinct name to Tidewater Park, which is the community that serves these residents.
It's actually Tidewater Gardens.
Okay, Tidewater Gardens. This would begin with elections after the November general election. The elementary school has adequate space, amenities, and it is within walking distance for the residents. It is located within the precinct lines. Now, as this shows, the number of registered voters within the precinct is 894, of which 769 are active. In 2012, at the presidential election, 611 ballots were cast, and at the last election in May, there were 57 votes cast. ADA compliance has been reviewed with the city's ADA coordinator, and we did look at that. And we have discussed this with the principal of Tidewater Park Elementary School, as well as our liaison with Norfolk Public Schools.
You have or you haven't?
We have. We could use, there is a mobile, a portable trailer next to the school, located to the right of the school from the parking lot. These citizens would be able to access the school directly from their location. They could walk from the back of the residence. There is a paved sidewalk that leads them directly to the school. For the smaller elections, we would be able to use the portable trailer, which does have an ADA accessible ramp and 2 doors that we could use as a voting entrance and exit. This is a picture of the interior of the trailer. Right now, they're in the process of moving desks. They've flip-flopped the students from Youngs Park Elementary and Tidewater Park Elementary, so they're in the process of moving the students around. So that would be empty other than the voting equipment. This is the ADA accessible ramp that leads directly to the cafeteria and auditorium of Tidewater Park Elementary School. We would use that in the larger elections, such as the presidential election. School is not in session during that time, so there would be no concerns with the students being there. And this is the interior of the cafeteria auditorium of the school. We also wanted to leave Ruffner Academy. We had talked to council about this before. That is still an option if you all want to consider. To relocate the polling place from Hunton Y to Ruffner Academy. This would begin again after the elections in November. That has adequate space, amenities, parking. It's directly across the street from Hunton Y, and that is an ADA compliant building. This is pictures of the exterior. There is a circular drive in front that could be used for anybody who needed to vote at the curbside. And we would use the smaller auxiliary gym, which is to the right of the larger gym within the school. There are timelines, of course, and notification that is required to all the residents. We would have to slate a public hearing and city council vote at a formal session. We're hoping to do that with your September 9th formal session, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. And voter cards would have to be mailed to all the registered voters once we do finally make the final decision. This again would be for elections after November because of our time constraints. We've already started ballot ordering and preparations for our November election, so it would not impact anything with this November election, but would begin with elections after November.
So the Hunton Y is good for November?
Yes, we're hoping we can move within that for November into another area. We have to talk with them because the current room that we're in is a problem.
Okay.
Okay, so where are we? The elementary school?
When the elementary school, I think about the flooding. That's an issue, and why you never can predict the weather. And then I also think about the future demolition whenever that might take place. So the main concern with Ruffner is pedestrian safety. And I'm just believing that pedestrian safety is something that we can take care of and just, do Ruffner and do everything that we can do as far as getting some of the seniors over by transportation. A lot of candidates provide transportation. And also making sure that during that particular period of time, and I do remember hearing someone say that with the polls closing at 7, that sometimes, like for a November election, it would be dark. So taking all those things in consideration, if we could make sure that our pedestrians were safe, I would still vote for Ruffner. I'm sure that the police department or some way we could figure that out. But pedestrian safety is probably the most important thing. And I would vote for Ruffner if we could handle pedestrian safety.
Okay,
I agree.
guys?
I mean, I agree
Sold.
with that.
Okay,
Okay,
Yeah.
that's it. Again.
You're welcome.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll bring forward the ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, members of council, I know we've got a lot to cover in closed session too, so we're gonna try to be very succinct on a fairly complex issue, but hopefully try to boil this down something simplistic. You may recall in the spring that we had a briefing. There's a desire of several residents in the Cottage Line Civic League area, in the Ocean View area, that requested a modification to the dune system. And applications went before the Norfolk Wetlands Board. There were, I believe, 22 applications originally. Many of the requests for modifications were able to be achieved, but some of which were not, because it's in what we call the coastal primary dune system, which I have Brian Joyner here, who's with Moffett Nickel, and we'll talk through some of that in just a minute. At the time we gave you the briefing, and as these applications were being heard over a couple different meetings, we committed that, being a data-driven organization, we were going to do a coastal engineering analysis for what, if any, modifications could be done, and came to the conclusion that, and the second version came out this summer, that yes, modifications can be done that still keep us within the safe zone, so to speak, of state and federal regulations. But there's definitely science behind it and what you achieve. The applications that were passed by the Norfolk Wetlands Board were appealed by a group, and it went to the Virginia Marine Resources Commission, which actually the Norfolk Wetlands Board, their appellate is the Virginia Marine VMRC. That decisions that the Norfolk Wetlands Board don't come to the Planning Commission or the City Council. They're directly related. They're permitted on behalf of VMRC. And so the dune engineering study that we did was the goal of that was to try to provide the Wetlands Board and the other federal agencies that we have to interact with to answer this question, whether or not there was an increased potential for flood damage. That was the goal of the engineering study. We presented initial findings of the study at a public meeting on May 21st, received some comments and some suggestions for some additional data that should be included, such as the actual request of the applicants and the movement of sand and where that should be placed, and then sea level rise, of course, that we have to deal with. So the final report's been received. It was distributed through the Civic League, and we've also communicated that to the federal agencies. We'd like to take about 15 minutes here for Brian to go over the findings of the study, and then I'll conclude with what the next steps are.
Right. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. I'm going to go through. If you have questions, let me know. Again, as Mr. Williams said, this is a dune integrity assessment. We're looking at the ability of the dune to withstand coastal storm surge, wave action, and wave overtopping as a way of judging what could be done to the dunes without increasing the potential for flood risk. The area we're talking about, and don't know if this works, we're talking about this part of Ocean View and Central Ocean View. There's the red lines on the map here are survey transects that have been monitored for the past approximately 8 years. So twice a year, we have data on what the dunes and the near shore of the beach look like, and we're able to use that data to see the changes in the beach, but also the most recent version of that data at the time of the study was used to assess how the dunes would behave today in a storm, and then how they might behave, how they would behave in a modified condition with volume moved around in the dune. A little closer look at the Cottage Line area, defined as between Beaumont Street and approximately 3rd Bay Street. I know that kind of goes out of Cottage Line a little bit to the southeast, but those are generally the area of the applications we saw. Again, the red lines indicate the survey transects spaced fairly regularly, and then the city surveyed 2 additional transects near an application property as part of this study. We use that data to do the analysis. The colors on the map indicate ground elevation based on the 2009 LIDAR survey of the city. The blue areas are lower, the green areas are slightly higher, and then the small areas of yellow and orange indicate higher dune peaks. In general, the dune peaks along Cottage Line are somewhere in the 15 to 20 foot range, most between 18 and 21 feet, as you can see from here, with a few higher up in the 25 to 30 foot range. When we talk about a dune, there's certain components that become important. The bay is out here. The beach berm is where the waves and the tide come up on day to day. The beach berm may have a width in the Cottage Line of somewhere between 60, 70 feet between high tide and the toe of the dune. And that's approximate. It varies depending on where you're at. And then you have the front of the primary dune. The primary dune is the first dune that the waves from a storm would interact with. You have the primary dune crest, and then you slope back to landward to have the toe or the back of the primary dune. Now in Cottage Line, it doesn't slope back nearly as dramatically as in this example from a VIMS report. And in some places where you don't have houses behind the dunes, you may have a secondary dune crest and other different kinds of vegetation. But in Cottage Line, we're generally dealing with just a primary dune followed by a developed area. There was some mention of a V-zone, a coastal V-zone in this area in the current work maps from FEMA's flood insurance rate maps. The yellow area indicates what will approximately come out in the preliminary maps as the V-zone, which is a coastal high hazard area. It has different regulations that go with it, and is generally defined as an area with a 3-foot wave height in the 100-year return period storm or the landward limit of the primary dune. So we were on this, the primary dune crest, the landward toe of it would by definition be in the V-zone. And that's how these maps were presumably drawn based on existing topography. Some ground truth, this is how the Cottage Line dunes look on the top around Grove Avenue and on the bottom around Cape View and Inlet Road. From standing up on a beach access and looking at this dune, the dunes are well developed, they're well vegetated at present. You can see some of the properties are lower than the crest of the dune, some of the properties are approximately equal with the crest of the dune, and some of the second stories obviously are higher than the dune. Generally representative of the area, there's a lot of vegetation on these dunes, and vegetation tends to stabilize dune sand. It doesn't guarantee it's going to stay in place, but it tends to stabilize dunes. And you can see in some places the vegetation is near existing fences or bulkhead lines. Mr. Williams mentioned some of the regulatory background, but we're primarily dealing with 2 kinds of regulations. The state regulation of the Primary Dune Act, which says that it's the intent of the state to preserve and protect the dunes and the ecological habitat that comes with them, unless there's, and so a permit to modify the dune would have to demonstrate there's no significant adverse ecological impact or that the modification is clearly necessary and consistent with public interest. We're also dealing with FEMA and the National Flood Insurance Program regulations and the Code of Federal Regulations, which in this case, that which addresses the V-zone, which does extend to the landward extent of the dune, basically says that FEMA and then therefore the communities have to prohibit any man-made alterations to the dunes in a V-zone that would increase potential for flood damage. And so really that second criteria, the FEMA National Flood Insurance criteria, is the one that we can measure in a coastal engineering model to see what the changes to the dune might do to the potential for flood damage, and that's what we're going to talk about from here.
May I ask one question?
Sure.
and you might have just answered a minute ago, but is vegetation around dunes protected like wetlands? I mean, can somebody remove the vegetation if they'd like to? Because on wetlands, I don't think you can remove that unless you mitigate it somewhere.
I'm not an expert in that law, but as far as I understand it, the vegetation is part of the dune, and so modifying the vegetation would be modifying the dune.
Okay.
There are others that understand that better than I do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Even if you've got invasive species like beach vitex or things like that?
That's, that's beyond my specific knowledge. I'm not an ecologist, so I don't know how the state particularly views certain species. But that's something that the Wetlands Board should consider probably in the VMRC as they think about this from an ecological standpoint. General description of what has been requested, and this is, obviously it changes from applicant to applicant, but in general, the applications have requested to remove sand from the landward toe of the dune that's near or encroaching on properties, to move that sand. They also requested to lower the crust of the dune by moving that sand and then revegetating it to a seaward position. So going from a higher, thinner crested dune to a wider crested but lower dune with sand seaward of where the current front of the dune is, and then revegetating the top of the dune. So what happens in a storm related to the dune is the normal water levels that you see here start to increase with the storm surge, whether it's a nor'easter or a hurricane, and the rate varies with the storm. But as they rise, maybe they go up a third of the dune height or half the dune height or more. Waves come on top of that, which elevates the effective water surface elevation that actually impacts the dune. And as those waves impact the dune, they begin to erode the dune, but they also run up on the face of the dune. So the combination of direct wave attack and then the wave run up and overwash starts the process of eroding the dune face, eroding the crest of the dune back, and the wave run up here. You can see it extends over the top of the dune. Obviously, it can't run up into thin air, but it does at that point begin to overwash and start to overtop the dune, which can flood areas behind the dune.
That's a good model, except for I don't think it's to scale with what they really are. You kind of lopped off almost the whole dune in your second slide compared to the previous slide. And not all of them are asking to cut off 20 feet of dune. And that,
No, not all.
right, I know.
Not all, you're
I'm
right.
just
It's a-
making sure council understands that that's not, I understand what you're trying to show there, but the way the graphic is,
Mhm.
you're almost making the dune flat in appearance, but
Mhm.
it's not necessarily as
No.
dramatic as the diagram's making it look.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So they-
There is one thing about it, though. From looking at the where the properties are on Cottage Line, if you see where the house is and the base of the house and the landward toe of the dune, that's about 10 or 11 feet. And so I tried to keep the crest at about 14 feet or 16, like above that elevation graphically. But you're right, it's not taking off the entire dune.
Right.
It's just the cartoon.
would you not pick up extra protection by putting the sand seaward?
All things being equal, if you have the same volume, and forgive me, I don't know how to make the laser work, so I'm going to walk over here. When we talk about dune volume or the dune reservoir volume, and I'm using sort of FEMA's definition, but a lot of other researchers and the literature does this the same way. You talk about the volume above the storm surge stillwater elevation, or the 100-year elevation in this case, and that may be about here. So you compute how much sand is in that volume above that elevation, and that's what's generally important for storm protection, according to the studies that I've read and how FEMA utilizes dune volume in their flood insurance rate mapping. So if you take that volume and you redistribute it, some of it necessarily goes below that elevation because you have to have a base to put the sand on. So you do sacrifice some of the volume that was higher at a lower elevation where it's not as effective. It's still there and it still does something, but it's not as effective as sand that is higher up and resisting the waves more directly.
Your study, I'm sorry.
No, and what you're saying is height makes more difference than width. I mean, which is what, that's not what we've heard from other.
Yeah, they play together. You could have a very high skinny dune that could be wiped out. If it's high enough, that's okay. If it's truly very high, maybe you could sacrifice some of the width. But they really do play together.
It's a function of
yeah.
the width and the height.
It's the width and the height, because if you have a high skinny dune and it's too steep, then it erodes.
Brian's
and you
gonna
lose the
walk you
volume.
some examples that
Yeah.
show the combination of height and volume.
So did any of this consider the 60-foot addition of sand that's gonna be added on, which the whole point of that is to protect the shoreline and
Yeah.
also the new berms that are gonna be coming in that could slow down wave action and other things?
Right. I did consider that. In Cottage Line, most of the area already has a 60-foot berm width, and the letter of the Corps of Engineers report says to maintain a minimum of a 60-foot berm width. It doesn't state putting an additional 60 feet everywhere. There may be sand put in Cottage Line, there may not. It depends on how they do their design and their volume, but the goal of the Corps study as it's written is to have a minimum of 60 feet. So I made sure that I looked and I saw that there was that generally in these transects. So I did think about it, but there was no added berm width
Yeah, I don't
based on
think it was
that.
explained.
They're not,
That-
so they're not gonna be
I don't-
getting part of that sand down there.
Yeah.
There are a number of issues around that. I don't want to speak for the Corps. I'm aware of how they talk about it, but there are property issues, and there's also issues of, again, how their studies define and what they're authorized to do. They're not actually authorized to place an additional 60 feet everywhere.
So the core rules on that, but didn't their studies also say that a 14-foot height was sufficient for the dune? And I don't think anybody's trying to go below 14.
Yeah. There, again, as I read their report, the 14-foot height dune was what they call the National Economic Development Plan. So the NED plan is based on optimizing cost benefit. So they go through a number of different scenarios when they start doing planning and design, and they say, well, what benefit do we get out of a 60-foot wide berm and a 10-foot dune? What benefit do we give out of a 50-foot berm and a 16-foot dune? And they do these analyses, and they do a lot of calculations in their coastal engineering models, which are the similar ones that I use. And they find the point at which they get the greatest return on investment, the highest benefit cost ratio, and that becomes their NED plan. These days, they don't now assign a level of protection to that and say this is a sufficient level of protection for a certain kind of storm. They don't say this will get you protection in the 100-year return period storm or the 50-year return period. They say this maximizes our investment.
Said another way, there's two differences in what Brian's about to show you on what the optimal height is versus what's in the Army Corps plan. So the Army Corps plan basically says you need, at a minimum for the cost of benefit ratio, build up to 14 feet with an assumption that there will be a failure and ongoing renourishments in the future. So it doesn't use the FEMA standard of potential flood risk damage that we're held to. It doesn't achieve that. It does allow failure of the dune system because it's planned for renourishments because of ongoing storms at the 7 and 9 year rates of the dune and the 60 feet. So up to 14 feet, build up to, not reduce down, but build up to 14 feet at a minimum for what they saw in their economic analysis. And then a minimum of the 60 foot of beachfront in the berm area. This analysis looks at, and that's what Brian's getting ready to walk into, is where does the dune fail in a storm scenario where you would increase the potential for flood damage to meet the FEMA criteria. So there are two different approaches, two different reasons for the heights.
I know we're running out of time, but I go back to that presentation from the Army Corps that they did not show some places getting 60 and some places not getting any. The diagram showed sand extension through all 7.5, 8 miles of beach. So I'm not saying you're wrong, but that's not what we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And also the berm placement and, East Beach and Willoughby Spit are completely different situations with sand and the need for sand. We know that Cottage Line collects a lot more sand, but That's not what the presentation said that we saw with the Army Corps. And I'd like to go back and look at that presentation. Somebody wants to send it to me, but I don't remember seeing that, so.
Just one clarity of that. A lot of the information that came out, it was the permit application, and they cover all bases in a permit application.
Okay.
So they seek and show a 60-foot ribbon. When this first came out, we thought it would be a 60-foot ribbon from Willoughby Spit to Little Creek, but now through refinement, it will only go in areas where there's lacking a 60-foot beach. All of Cottage Line at this point has that 60-foot berm beach. So there will be modifications.
Okay, well, I think at least Councilman Nguyen and I should be, Andy, if he wants to join, need to be updated on that, because that's not my understanding of it.
How much longer is this presentation going to
What,
last?
if we could, probably 5 minutes if we can
probably do
cover
it in
it.
5 or 10 minutes, yeah.
The optimal.
I don't want, this isn't, we all want to weigh in on this. And we've got some business to do in closed session. I don't know what the council's, pleasure is, but I wouldn't mind bringing this whole thing back where we could spend the time and ask us what
Spend more
questions.
time.
And I don't want to go through it another 5 minutes and then check the box off. I mean, and maybe you could get this information to us ahead of time. I know we got some of it. So, is that all right, Marcus? So maybe our next meeting, maybe we can come in at 4 o'clock, spend an hour and a half doing this.
Can I ask,
Yes.
can you answer one, if they could, if we could task them, when you do that and you come back, answer one question for me. How do we get our citizens what they want? If you get me that answer.
How do we
Okay.
protect their property?
And get what they want. I want to know how we get them what they want.
We have to do it without
We
jeopardizing.
can't.
I want to know.
We can't have everybody get what they
Right,
want.
and they-
We have to do it
let's
in a
say the
safe way.
community-
Get them
has-
what, I want to know how we get them what they
Right.
want. Do you understand the question?
But they've
Yes.
also
Then answer it and you come back.
compromised. They
Easy.
know there's a compromise with
Okay.
this. They
That's what I
understand that.
want. How do you get those people in the corner, what they're looking for and what they want? Give me how we can do that. That's all I want to know right now. Do it when we come back. Don't rush it now. Don't give me
Okay,
one
then-
answer.
With
We
the-
That's what I
also,
want.
with the parameters of how we
Right.
do this thing.
Yeah,
And if we have to go outside,
Scientifically,
They understand that. I mean, they know there's a
ecologically,
compromise with
scientifically
this.
Well, and that
Within the
also
confines.
complies with federal.
and then go outside the confines and tell me how we do
All right, what we want is the full presentation,
Right.
okay?
Do
And
it
then
within the
Then we'll try to
confines.
see how we get where we want
it.
to
And
go.
if we have to go outside the confines, then tell me what it is.
Okay, and I'm sorry to rush you. I didn't mean to do this, but I mean, there are some things that have popped up that we have to go into closed session on that, if we can bring this back to next meeting, maybe come in at 4 o'clock, and start this discussion, because I really don't want to use it so important, I don't want to rush it. Okay, good enough?
We need to bring it to a head.
Yeah, but we got
Will
to
they
do
go
it.
before Virginia Marine?
Yeah.
That's 20-something though,
Yeah,
right?
later in the month.
23rd is BMRC.
When is the next meeting is,
Ninth?
the 9th, okay? So we'll do it then. All right.
I would allow an hour, Mr. Manager.
At least an hour.
Allow at least
Okay.
an hour.
All right, we're going to go into closed session, okay?
Move the members of council assemble in closed meeting on August 26, 2014 at 6:23 PM for the purposes set out in clauses 137 and 29 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act.
These are the
That is
same
discussion of
responses.
candidates for appointment to city boards, commissions, or authorities.
Has to
Three,
be a
discussion
place
of the
where this has
acquisition of
happened
real
before.
property for public purpose in
That,
Bayview, and discussion of the disposition of publicly held real
Okay, I
property
mean,
in
there has
the
to be
vicinity of Northampton
place
Boulevard and
where
West
this happened
Drive.
before.
In Meadowbrook, Valentine Place,
That they
Colonial Place,
didn't,
and Campus
every
College.
didn't just didn't get to grow to be
Seven,
30, 40
consultation
foot.
with legal
Okay.
counsel,
Somebody
by
applies
staff
something.
members, consultants, or attorneys regarding legal disclosures for bond transactions and one legal matter
They
related
driving out to
to
Virginia Beach, we waved at you.
29, discussion of the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, and discussion of the terms of such contract where discussion of open session would adversely affect the bargaining or negotiating strategy of the public body. Ms. Johnson,
Citizens in
Mr. Protogiero,
Here, what are we doing? Closed session.
Mr. Riddick,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Smigiel, Dr. Whibley, Ms. Williams, Mr. Wynn,
Aye.
Mr. Frame.
Maybe they can.